Good morning, dear all students. Welcome back to my channel. IAS today. It goes in continuation with the previous lectures. In the previous lectures, we have done the making of Indian Constitution. On every Tuesday, I make a one lecture on Indian Constitution or Indian polity. This goes in continuation with the old ones, and today I will be talking about the Government of India Act 1909. That's also called Morley Minto reforms. And another act I'll be talking about will be the Montagu and Chelmsford reforms, or what do we call it as Government of India Act 1919. So the two acts I'll be taking today, that is one Government of India Act 1909, another Government of India Act 1919. 1909 or 1919. I'll brief you the basic features. Uh, First one, when we talk about the Morley and Minto reforms, or we talk about Government of India Act 1909, the basic features were which were added in this one in this act were elections for non-officials. In the last text, we talked about Government of India Act 1858. Then we talked about the Government of India Act 1861. We talked about Government of India Act 1892. So in these all acts, we talked about the basic features, and we happened to talk about that there used to be, say, a post of Secretary of State, then along with that, an executive council. Generally, in executive councils, we had a provision of keeping the Indians also, and Indians were at the level of non-official Indians. But now the question arose that how to take up those non-official Indians. In the previous acts, certain formulae were given. How do we take about the non-official Indians? Supposingly a person of royal background, Indian origin, say Rai Bahadur Sahab, Jang Bahadur Sahab, something like that, right? Renowned people of that village or renowned people of that area. But now, with the passage of time, there used to be criticism that these formulae are not right one or these are not justified. So finally, we reached the consensus that election should be the method of selection of non-official Indians. So minded what I mean to say, election as the method of, I'm highlighting, election as the method of selection of these non-official Indians, right? This was the first thing which was introduced in the Executive Council of the Governor General and the Executive Council of the Secretary of State. And also at the district level, the governor or the lieutenant governors. These all the officials used to have the secretary, the executive council, and in the executive council, there used to be the non-official Indians. Now this time the method is coming up election. See, the things are coming up better. Things are coming up the refined. Why? Because our freedom struggle is going on. It is the effect of our freedom struggle that the things are getting better and the modern terminology is coming up. Another thing which was introduced by this act was communalism. Communalism, or what we say, separate electorate for Muslims. I might have written somewhere, yes, separate electorate for Muslims. Yes, the concept of separate electorate. For whom it was introduced this time? By this time it was introduced for Muslims. First time this provision has been introduced, now the question arises, what is meant by separate electorate? Separate electorate is that a concept wherein in a majority of the area, an area is dominated by, say, Muslims, and in that area only Muslims will be in a condition to contest elections. So Muslims only were allowed to contest elections in the Muslim dominated area. So that is the concept of separate electorate. And this time Muslims perceive that, Britishers perceive that Muslims are the people, those who are different from this majority Hindus. So they introduced this concept of separate electorate for Muslims. These were the major effects of the Morley and Minto reforms. Another thing was that elections in legislative council were also held. So what I say in the third provision was, which you can note down, is that elections in legislative councils at center was introduced. See, the word election is coming up, and you are in 1909. 1947 is very near, so meaning we are very close to freedom, And this time the freedom struggle is going on, the renaissance is going on. Our intelligentsia is growing and they are demanding, if this thing is in London, if this thing is in England, if there is democracy, if there is election, why don't we have that same thing in our India? And because of that great freedom struggle, we are getting these things in India also. The another act I would like to discuss is Government of India Act 1919, or we alternatively call it Montagu and Chelmsford Reforms. Montagu and Chelmsford Reforms, it introduced many things. The first and foremost thing which it introduced was diarchy. The first thing is diarchy at provinces, or what we say, diarchy at provincial subjects. Diarchy at provinces, I have already highlighted, you can note down. It is like this, diarchy at provincial subjects. So you mean to say, we mean to understand that the legislature was divided into two parts. It was bicameral. Legislature was at center also, legislature was at at states also, at provinces also. But now this diarchy is getting introduced in provinces only, not at center. And at this time, what was done? Diarchy meaning rule of two. I'm writing here, diarchy meaning rule of two. Rule of two. That is British and Indian. British government and Indian. Things are getting better. We are very close to independence. We are very close to independence. Why? Because the freedom struggle is going on. Vigorous freedom struggle is going on. Intelligence are growing. People staying in, Indians staying in Asian countries, in America, in Europe. They are understanding that how and why. They're raising the questions. If this thing is existing in Europe and America, why don't we have this thing in India? If this that thing is existing in those countries, why don't we have that in India? Diarchy provinces meant that two subject lists were made, one transferred list, transferred subjects, another reserved subjects. One was transferred subjects, another was reserved. So transferred, reserved meaning that Governor General is saying these are the subjects which are reserved with me. These are to be legislated by Governor General with the aid and assistance of the Council of Ministers, but without being responsible to them. So you need to understand the wording and mind the wording. What I say, I repeat that these are the subjects which are to be legislated by me, by the Governor General, with the aid and assistance of the Council of Ministers, without being responsible to them. Another, when we talk about, is transferred list subjects, meaning these are the subjects which I am transferring to the legislators. Meaning these are to be subjects to be legislated by Governor General with the aid and assistance of the Council of Ministers and being responsible to them. So minded the wording is being responsible. I'm writing here being responsible. Being responsible to the, obviously, to the Council of Ministers, to the all legislators. Being responsible, right? What we can say, we being responsible. Being responsible meaning being answerable. Being answerable. Being answerable meaning that questions could be posed that Mr. Minister, you did this, why? Mr. Minister, you did not do so, why? So that is what we have in nowadays contemporary parliaments of the world, in the legislatures of the world. That the minister is being posed the questions. You need to understand what kind of businesses are being done in the parliaments or the legislatures of the world. These are the things, either the bills are passed or initiated, or secondly, what I say, the questions to the ministers. That Mr. Minister, you did this, why? Mr. Minister, you did not do so, why? And being answerable, believe me, is not a happy moment for anyone. When you're answerable, you're held answerable. So it means it puts a pressure. So before doing work, you will think, you will calculate, you will rehearse that tomorrow if I do anything wrong, tomorrow there will be questions and the public will ask me and the legislature will ask me. So this is the first thing, meaning it is coming up. A modern democratic feature is coming up in Indian polity, and that too when we are not independent. That too when we are not independent, meaning the things are getting better. Why? Because this is 1919. It is not far away from 1947. You're coming very close to independence. And it is the result of Indian freedom struggle, the Renaissance, and the growing intelligence shy in India. And as reserved subjects, I already explained, reserved subjects are those subjects wherein which are legislated by Governor General again, with the Council of Ministers again, but not being responsible. I'll write down here, let me augment this view without uh, without being responsible. I say without being responsible. Without being responsible to the legislature, to the council of ministers, to the public of people of India. Right? So, meaning these are, I mean, what we talk about nowadays as discretionary power of president or the discretionary power of the governors. So, meaning here, and you cannot say why you did this thing, Mr. Minister, why? So, Governor General will talk that, yes, because these are my reserved subjects. I can do it. There's no why. Because these are reserved subjects. So, this is the one provision we are talking under the umbrella of diarchy at provinces. Diarchy is the rule of two, government of two, British and Indians. Another thing which will crop up, which cropped up during this time period was just a minute. This was the first one. This would have been the second one. Okay. Devolution rules. Another thing which cropped up in this act was devolution rules. For understanding devolution rules, you need to understand devolution rules. You need to understand there are there is a few more wording. There is a one more term that is delegation. That is delegation. So we need to understand devolution, we need to understand delegation. Delegation or the devolution both are temporary transfer of power. What do I talk about is temporary transfer of power. Temporary transfer of power, obviously to the lower authority by the higher authority. Why? There has to be a why. In case of delegation, there is insufficiency of time. When there is insufficiency of time, insufficiency of time. When there is less time, you cannot legislate on a particular subject. You will delegate that to the lower authority, saying you make law on this because we don't have the time to do it. And nowadays also we have adopted in our Indian polity. My aim is to tell you what did we adopt, what did we not adopt, right? So what did we adopt is, yes, the delegation is there. Delegation, economic delegation is also there, financial delegation is also there, and legislative delegation is also there in our contemporary India. So why? Yes, we like this idea. If the senior body has got no time, it is insufficiency of time. You can delegate it to the lower body, lower legislative body. They can make law. But devolution is also the temporary transfer of power, but there's no why. Why? Why we are doing it? I mean, there are few lines are written that becomes more difficult, more risky. Why? We don't know why. I could explain you that devolution rules were used by Britishers इन सेंस जैसे इंडिया में बोलते हैं लारा लगा के रखो लाई रखो कहते कुड़ी मैंने लाई रख दी कैसे क्योंकि whenever we used to make hue and cry that why you are doing it, how you are doing it, we don't know when did you start doing it. So Britishers would tell, okay, we used to say that you did not give us participation in rule making, in law making. You did not give us any participation. Britishers would say, okay, you want to make law? Okay, you make law. You study, you do a lot of research, and you start doing whatever you want to do. And by the time, it used to take 5 months, 6 months, year or so. and thereafter it used to absorb the energy of the intellectuals, of the intelligentsia, of the politicians of the area. And by the end, whenever a thing would crop up that yes, this is the law, we should sign it, at that time when it used to be the time of signatures, Governor General would say, no, I'm so sorry, I can't sign. Why? It used to say, I have taken back this power long back. This power now doesn't lie with you. Why? Because this was my devolution rules. I can take back power anytime, right? So I can take back any power anytime. This was the system that Britishers used to make use of this devolution rule in this sense. So in nutshell or in a cut short, what I want to say, devolution is just nothing, wherein you devolve a power to the lower ordinary body. Why you're doing it, there's no why you're confiscating it, there's no why. But in delegation, yes, uh, there is a reason that because of insufficiency of time we can transfer this power to the lower body, and we understand there is a one mental makeup that yes, this power can be taken back also, right? As and when time will be there in this lawmaking, as of the time when we are making it is all right, but any time it can be taken back, right? So the rules, all the rules made in Government of India Act 1919, or what do we call is Montagu and Chelmsford reforms, were by way of devolution, right? Another thing was separate budget, the provision of separate budget. Now, why did this arose? This is a good thing in our India, contemporary Indian polity also. We do have this separate budget for the state, separate budget for the center. You can find that GST, though we say one nation, one taxation, but I found it, this is, central GST, and then this is state GST. Let's cut short it that one tax for one share of the taxation out of this GST is for center, and the remaining half is for the states. So let's make it the divide right from beginning. So meaning we have this separate budget for the center, separate budget, separate taxes and budget, income and expenditure for the center, separate income and expenditure for the states in today's contemporary polity. The same we adopted from this provision. When this act adopted for the first time separate provision of separate budget. Now, why did British adopt this? Why did British innovate this? Why did British introduce this? Because whenever we used to, now the time used to come, because this is 1919, the time is coming up. Intelligence in India is growing, and they're talking that how and why. We need participation in lawmaking, in rule making. Of course, yes, to an extent that was being given, right, in one form or the another. Now, finally, whenever law was passed by the Governor General, putting up the signatures across that bill and making that bill as act, finally, that legislature would approach for budget for implementing that law or that rule. The legislators would talk, Governor General, please budget some money allocation. He would always say, no, 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 everything is all right, but budget and money, I cannot give you. Budget and money, I cannot give you. Why? He would always say that this is reserve. Yes, of course, they have kept finance as reserve. I go for the critical analysis of reserved and transport subjects also. So I'm talking, he would say, no, no, no. The money is a reserve subject. I can do anything, I can put up signatures also, but I cannot give you money. And this used to be, very much harassing. So finally, we derived a concept that there should be separate budget. Britishers wanted it rather. When you're talking about that, you have that expenditure. All along with that, you make an estimate of income also. If you're saying that you have this much expenditure, why don't you settle down and find out that where from this income will accrue? So finally, concept of separate budget for states and separate budget for center was innovated, and in that budget, income and expenditure both were taken into account. If you're talking this is expenditure, it's not the right thing. You talk about where from the income will come, where from the income will accrue. So that is the provision of separate budget which was introduced. Before I go for the next provisions, I would like to talk about the drawbacks of this DAC. You can note down when I say, let me finish it up here, I'll say the drawbacks of DAC. Drawbacks of DAC. The drawbacks or the shortcomings of the diarchy we would like to see. What were those shortcomings? Of the diarchy, we'll see number one. I'll discuss, I'll explain, and I'll write. Number one was dominating powers of Governor General. You can note down the dominating powers of Governor General. In what sense? I'll explain. Governor General. That is, in case of any conflict between reserved and transferred subjects, as I talked about, these are the reserved subjects, these are the transferred subject. No listing of the reserved and transferred subject was done by the Governor General, by the British government, that which subjects are reserved, which subjects are transferred. In case of any conflict, that this is reserved, this is transferred, Governor General used to be the decisive authority. We need to understand that Governor General used to be the decisive authority. That is why we say Governor General's dominating powers. Governor General as decisive authority. So Governor General used to be, in case of any conflict, you should note down. I'm not writing all the details. I'm saying in case of the conflict between the reserved subjects and the transferred subjects, the Governor General used to be the decisive authority. This goes against the well-established legal ethics, legal norms. Against the legal norms is Nemo Judex Causa Sua. That is Nemo Judex Causa Sua. Nemo Judex Causa Sua. I'll explain. Nemo Judex Causa Sua, a Latin proverb, a legal ethic. That is talking that nobody can be a judge in a case against himself. Judge has to be third neutral power. What judge has to be third neutral power? Judge has to be third neutral power. Right? This means that nobody can be a judge in a case against himself or herself. That means judge has to be third neutral power. Meaning if two parties are fighting, either of the party cannot be judge. The judge has to be the third neutral power in addition with these two fighting parties. Right? But when Governor General and the Indians are fighting, the legislators are fighting, Governor General is saying, Mujhe batao, tell me what is the issue, I'll resolve, I am the judge. So I am the judge is, obviously he will say, he will always award in his favor. He will always award the decision in his favor. So Governor General's dominating powers, that was the main criticism. Then confusion, a lot of confusion. Confusion is another thing. Confusion between reserved and transferred powers. Right? Confusion between transferred and reserved powers is another criticism. Another thing is that finance was reserved. Another very important criticism was finance was reserved. जो finance ही reserve है तो काम कैसे करेंगे? Finance was reserved. A reserved subject. So these were the criticisms of this diarchy. We talked about, let me sum up again, what did we talk about? We talked about the Government of India Act 1919, Montego Transport Reforms, 1919, and in that we talked diarchy, in that we talked about the devolution rules, in that we talked about separate budget. And now another thing which I would like to talk about is bicameral legislature. The legislature first time became the bicameral, meaning two houses, upper house with the members as, out of 60, 34 were elected. What I can say, 34 out of 60 were elected members, right? I say these were elected members. 30 out of 64 were elected. When 30 out of 60, 34 out of 60 are elected, I mean to say that I'm talking that renaissance in polity is emerging. It's cropping up. The better reforms are coming up. Why? Because the freedom struggle is there. Indian intellectuals, Indian scholars, the intelligentsia is fighting for the betterment of Indian polity. This used to be the upper house. These were the members of the upper house. These were the members of upper house. The lower house would have one. लोअर हाउस में क्या था 104 out of 144 out of 144 were elected members in lower house. So you're finding that refinement and the reforms in Indian polity is cropping up, is coming up. Another thing is prior assent of Governor General. अब हर जगह पे क्या है you will have to seek the prior assent of Governor General to initiate even a bill. अभी to initiate a bill पहले क्या होता था by the end when both the houses will pass it then you will go to the executive to the Governor General for his assent. But now here what it is another issue has been introduced that you will not initiate any bill without the prior assent of Governor General. Right? Then extensive communalism, this time separate electorate for number of communities, not only Muslims, number of communities it was introduced. Later on, the trend will increase. By the Act of Government of India Act 1935, British government will rather start. Say that Anglo-Indians should also get a good chunk, the separate electorate for them also. So we'll see that how that will go. That's I think all we get prior assent of Governor General and extensive communalism. If you want these notes, these are available. You can get the PDF of this all from our Google Classroom notes. You can send me your email. I can add you there. You can give me your phone number. The WhatsApp message, WhatsApp file could also be given to you. These are all free of cost, right? These two acts could be given to you either through my Google Classroom or through our website, or we can send you the WhatsApp files also. And that all is possible. This all service is free of cost. Please, if you like it, like and share it, because once you like and share it, then only we can continue these lectures, which are free of cost. Feel free to contact me. You could call me on the number, though it is given here also, Dr. Kheraz IAS Today Chandigarh. It's 9501912079. And the website you can go for iascoachingchandigarh.com. The website iascoachingchandigarh.com or 9501912079. The numbers are given here also. Numbers are given in the channel also. Thank you. God bless you. All the best and a good day.